As an artist, I sincerely empathize with Zhezhi. Striving for a perfect piece of art can be a challenge, but luckily for us, Zhezhi's kit is quite dynamic and adaptable. Zhezhi will be a very powerful sub DPS to support your main DPS, and she excels with buffing characters who utilize their resonant skill. With that being said, that isn't her only purpose, and characters like Sanhua who buff basic attack damage may enable her to even be a main carry. Just like when you paint a canvas, you want to have an idea of how to use that canvas, so that's where I come into play. I'm Void Enigma, and I'll be explaining everything about Zhezhi as far as her kit, teams, and how to play her. Zhezhi is a character who has an outstanding resonance liberation skill, allowing for 30 seconds of off-field damage. This is primarily single target, but we'll dive into the implications of that later. Let's talk about the rest of her kit, however. Zhezhi's forte circuit, meaning this gauge here, is filled by using basic attacks, and everything in her kit is considered a basic attack, as well as her intro skill, which also fills it by quite a bit. She can hold up to 90, but the main point is that you need to gain about 60, but having full stacks will actually be beneficial as well. When you do have 2/3 of the gauge, then her resonant skill will summon 2 imprints. In addition, if you have a max gauge, she can summon another one of these using a basic attack. So 60 gets you 2 imprints from a resonant skill, and by using various methods, you can gain another one of these imprints if you have another 30. So full gauge, you get 3 imprints. Now, here's where the fun happens. When you have imprints on the field, whether it's 1, 2, or 3, her resonant skill will be replaced, and when you use that resonant skill, you will blink to the place of the imprint and do an attack. If you summon 3 imprints, you get 3 blinks or teleports. If you summon 2, you get 2 blinks and so on. It's important to always have 3 of these blinks on field before activating her resonant skill for the most damage overall. She gets big benefits from having all 3. You get 2 stacks from the first 2 blinks, and then when you do the last blink, you're going to do an enhanced resonant skill, which is considered basic attack, and it'll increase your basic attack damage for the next 27 seconds. Honestly, all of her durations and buffs are long as hell, which is great. Another side note is that her mid-air dodge will refresh with each blink, so if you're in fear of getting hit, just blink away, and then you'll be able to dodge again. This is going to be the brunt of her on-field presence. You're going to stack up this gauge here, use her resonant skill, blink to each location while doing follow-up attacks. Now her resonance liberation is going to be her off-field presence. This lasts for 30 seconds, which is pretty awesome, and it is triggered whenever damage is dealt. She can summon up to 21 of these little inklets, and that can really stack up over time, and whenever you deal damage, more inklets will be fired out. These are all considered basic attack damage, so when you're looking for those substats, hint hint, you know what you're gonna want from your echoes. Her inherent skills are also pretty amazing. When she does use her resonant skill to the full extent of it, she'll increase her own attack, which you get 3 stacks of, and her outro skill has another major bonus, allowing the incoming character to gain 15 energy, making her a great battery. In addition, her normal outro buff will actually buff resonant skill damage and glacio damage, so that's pretty damn good as well. We will go into these implications later on who she actually works with when we go to the team section. Now that we reviewed her kit, let's talk about her echo sets briefly, because she can use 2 sets, the Glacio set and the Moonlit set. Here is the thing though. The most important part of her kit is getting off of resonance liberation, so you're really going to want to have energy for the set, but that shouldn't be too difficult if you have a few energy recharge substats. The Moonlit set, along with the Heron Echo, will make this very easy to do, however. Whichever set you go with is going to depend on the characters that you want to use her with and what weapons you have. For instance, if you're using the variation, which I don't really recommend, but it's still an option, her personal damage is not going to be that significant compared to something like her signature weapon or any other 5-star rectifier for that case. If you are using a 5-star weapon, then I would definitely lean more into her personal damage, hence being the Glacio set will be a better option. With this set, she can easily take care of the elemental set bonus because all of her attacks are considered basic attack damage. With all that being said, the main echo for the Glacio set is terrible. It's clunky and requires way too much field time. If you do opt to go with the Glacio set, then it will be more beneficial to do a quick swap 3-cost echo. This guy here is actually a great option because he'll actually attack off field, and that will leave Zhezhi to be able to do whatever she wants, and even when you leave field, she'll still be there. If you do opt to go with the Moonlit set to buff your main DPS instead, she'll be taking on more of a supportive role, and her damage will be slightly less, well, kind of significantly less for that matter. If you are using one of the 4-star weapons, then I would probably recommend this path, as her main goal would be better suited to buffing the main carry, but it also just depends on what your goals are. Either set will work perfectly fine, but 5-star weapons go for the main glacial damage set, and 4-star weapons, or if you're using the variation rectifier, then you want to go with the Moonlit set. As for stat priorities, you're going to want to prioritize crit rate, crit damage for the 4-piece, depending on which gives you a better ratio, glacial damage for the 3 cost, and attack for the 1 cost naturally. For the substats, focus on crit, energy recharge, and basic attack damage bonus. Again, her entire kit is considered basic attack damage, so that's the only boost that she wants. Attack is also a great option, so keep that in mind. Alright, now that we talked about Zhezhi's echoes, let's talk about Zhezhi's weapons. She is a damage dealer, so damage dealing rectifiers are what you're going to want. Again, variation is an option, but I really don't recommend it because it will substantially reduce her damage output, but it will let her have her liberation up at all times. You can definitely get this either way if you build her with about somewhere between 120 and 140% energy recharge. So you're definitely going to want to strive for at least 2 to 5 substat rolls across the echoes. If you can get 130, I think that's a pretty comfortable place to be. If you're using the Moonlit set though, then you really won't have to actually go that far. The BP Recidifier is going to be her best 4-star option. Honestly, Augment is really the only functioning weapon for her at the moment, but if all else fails, then you can definitely go with Jinzhou's Keeper. Of the 5-star rectifiers in the game, her signature is pretty damn awesome. But you can also just make use of the standard Winter Brune rectifier. It actually gives a ton of basic attack damage bonus, so it's well suited for her. Unfortunately, the durations aren't that long, but it'll still be very helpful. Now for her signature, giving a crap ton of crit damage, and the effect boosts her off-field damage significantly. It is definitely something that you want to consider picking up because it is very powerful on her specifically, but for future characters, it might not be that beneficial considering that it works off-field for basic attack damage. That's really specific, and I don't know if future characters are going to have the exact same roles as Zhezhi. Unfortunately, for her to shine, she needs a 5-star weapon. You can actually use Yinlin's weapon on her as well, so keep that in mind. Alright, the main piece of the canvas, Zhezhi's teams. What do you think of when you have an off-field damage dealer who deals consistent off-field damage, as well as buffing resonant skill damage? You'd like a character like that, right? Well, you can also like this video, and that is definitely the answer that you were seeking. Yep. Art takes time to finish, so liking this video takes just a second, and it'll help the artwork reach its peak potential. Alright, now the character that we were all thinking of is of course, Zhezhi. At the moment, Zhezhi is without a doubt Jinxi's best partner. Her off-field damage will consistently happen, helping her get that laser of doom that is Zhezhi. In addition, she can buff her resonant skill damage with her outro, which will greatly increase her overall damage. She is essentially a more powered up Yunwu with less defensive utility. Her forte gauge will take a bit more to actually fill up for Yunwu, but the benefits of actually using her full rotation and getting all of her stacks up as well as buffing Zhezhi will be massive. Zhezhi isn't her only option though. She is really going to be in the same role as Yinlin, being a universal secondary character. You could even pair her with Yinlin for a dual swap setup. Chun-Li is the next best character to use her buffs, as that 20% damage bonus to resonant skill will be a huge benefit. As Zhezhi can also quickly fill up her Concerto gauge, this can be massive for Chun-Li. Sadly, Chun-Li cannot buff Zhezhi in return, because none of her damage is considered Resonance Liberation damage, so the main target for the buffs will be to buff up Chun-Li. Now, she works with literally every other character as a sub DPS, Havoc Rover, or any character coming in the future. She can also buff Ling Yang, and for the 3.5 people who main him, the glacial damage buff will be pretty good. Surprisingly enough, Qixia is a great character to pair alongside her, especially if you have Qixia's S6. Shishi's S6 increases the basic attack damage for the entire team by 25%, so this would be a great boost for her damage. She also works really well with Sanhua, and they can function as a dual DPS setup, and Sanhua will significantly buff basic attack damage even more, so again, another great unit to pair her with if you want to use Zhezhi as a more dual DPS or main DPS role. She is a very flexible character, so she will be on the radar when a character comes out that specializes in resonant skill damage, so be on the lookout. Alright, now let's briefly talk about her sequences, because all of her sequences are actually pretty damn good. Her S1 is a great pickup as it will increase her crit rate by 10%, and she'll restore 15 energy when she uses her enhanced resonant skill, which will really help with her energy needs. Now, this is a really good stopping point by itself because this will really boost her overall damage and make her Resonance Liberation come up a lot easier, but you won't really have much issues getting your Resonance Liberation as long as you build her with enough energy. Her S2 will greatly increase her Resonance Liberation damage, like a lot. It's going to double the amount of Inklings that it can attack at one time, and will raise it to 6, essentially doubling the damage of her Resonance Liberation. But you are going to actually have to use a character who has a significant amount of attacks to actually fully utilize this, so keep that in mind. Her S3 will increase her attack by a ton when she uses any form of a resonant skill, which will stack up to 3 times and last for 27 seconds. Her S4 is a universal team damage boost when she uses her Resonance Liberation, so that's a good plus. Her S5 will allow another coordinated attack to happen along with her original Resonance Liberation skill, and it'll also have an increased basic attack damage in conjunction with it, so that's going to be pretty good. And her S6 will do the same, except this is with her Resonance skill. Each time that she uses her Resonance skill, she'll summon an extra attack to assist dealing a frick ton of damage. All of her sequences are pretty good, but none are required. Her S2 will be a significant damage increase for her overall, and S1 will be a good quality of life, but I wouldn't really recommend getting many of them. Zhezhi will be an excellent sub DPS to complement your main DPS while contributing major damage to the team. She also buffs Glacio and Resonant skill damage dealers, so she will be a very good character for future units, making her somewhat future-proof. Unlike Chun-Li, however, you can use her entire kit off-field, which means that you don't have to play her in a quick swap team, but you can decide to still play her in that type of team if you choose to. She's not really a must-pull unit, but I would recommend pulling her, especially if you have Jinshi, because the sheer amount of coordinated attacks that she can let off is kind of insane. Now keep in mind that she has a very similar role to Yinlin, who could do the same, and she has much more AoE, but the difference here is that you could just use this without thinking about it. You don't have to reapply it when a new wave comes up, and it lasts for almost double the duration, so that's the benefits of using Zhezhi. It's unfortunate, however, that you do need a 5-star rectifier to actually abuse her power, but it's only a matter of time until you get one thanks to the standard banner being guaranteed. Good luck to those pulling for Zhezhi. Find your inner artist and let loose your ink upon the world, or just let Zhezhi do it. Please don't abuse her with changes at the end of the rotation because she will without a doubt push herself to complete those tasks. Go ahead and like this video if you found it enjoyable or entertaining, and make sure to subscribe for more Woo-Wah content in the future. Until next time, Enigma out.